So fundamentals then of a successful FinOps strategy. A lot of it boils down to, well, how well can I allocate the spend that I see from my total bill across multiple clouds? And the reason that that's really important is that when we start to then think about the cultural elements that we talked about, right? The ownership of cloud costs that you want individuals to take responsibility for within their organization. We have to get them allocated, right? So we have to get a bucket of cost that, you know, Parker owns for his application and I own for my application, and you know, the engineering team owns for their applications. And one of the ways that we do that is using metadata. Okay, tags will be the word that we'll use here, right? But in the cloud space, we can take any or most resources and we can label them with many labels, right? Same as walking around a data center with a set of sticky little labels and sticking them on, but they can be much more flexible and of course read programmatically. Now, it sounds really easy, but the cloud vendors themselves don't help in terms of the tools that they provide us. And when we're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands, if it's not millions of resources, then it can be very easy to get this wrong. And ultimately, your reporting needs are going to evolve over time as well. So, you know, for those of you with FinOps experience as practitioners, you will know the pain of a tagging strategy and the management of tags. It's so fundamental, but also so commonly, you know, wrong, right? It's like the mantra about CMDBs, right? They're always inaccurate. Okay, you know, basically they're super hard to maintain. Okay, it's a maintenance exercise. But Flexera provides lots of capabilities to help us manage this, but it is fundamental to you know, success in this space, successful allocation. And the allocation of costs, as well as the ownership and everything else, then flows down. And when we looked at the slide with the secondary, you know, capabilities listed on, then cost allocation underpins almost everything else that we do. I can't do budget management. I can't do forecasting. I can't get the context of my rate and usage reduction recommendations if I haven't allocated my cost. So it's really important. And whilst the best practice of the life cycle is that you go around those stages almost as quickly as possible and you iterate and continually improve, it can be very easy for organizations to get bogged down in that inform stage and that cost allocation stage. You know, we have some customers that have got like in excess of 99% of their cost allocated, including shared cost and labor and licensing. I mean, it's, you know, absolutely fantastic, but they've not actually saved any money because they haven't got on to the kind of cost optimization part of the whole process, because they've been so kind of infatuated with that allocation piece. And often it can be actually the easiest part, right? So as a FinOps team, maybe with, you know, not executive sponsorship or, you know, the ability to kind of change and influence other parts of the organization, you can kind of focus on the things that you can control, whereas actually taking action on recommendations and other things is about working with other teams and the collaboration piece, right? So it can be easy for organizations to kind of dwell on this. Nonetheless, really important. I've got like idle EC2 instance, right? Its CPU is like averaging at, you know, 2%, and the recommendation is to switch it off. Am I going to take that recommendation if I don't know whether it's dev, test, or prod? No, right? Am I going to take that recommendation if I don't know which application or business service it underpins? No, you're just not going to switch it off, right? So the contextualization is critical, really important. When we're talking about cloud resources, EC2 instances and NAT gateways and all sorts of things at a super granular level, then tagging those and labeling every single one of them, you know, is difficult, if not impossible. Obviously, people are now building infrastructure using scripts and CI/CD and other things, right? So it's doable, but it's not necessarily the initial tagging, but it's the subsequent maintenance that's really hard. And so you'll have seen that the cloud vendors have started putting constructs in place in order to help, right? So you've got resource groups, you've got subscriptions now support tags, you've got AWS adding AWS organizations and letting accounts have tags, right? So there are lots of boundaries that exist in the cloud vendors, constructs that support tagging for good reason. Because if I tag a whole account and say that that's dev and it gets charged to Tim's cost center, it doesn't matter what the resources are tagged, because everything within it, I know who's responsible for it and what environment it's in. Okay, so try and lift it up to some logical construct or grouping if possible. And that's not always possible. You might have an account and it's got infrastructure from all sorts of different environments and cost centers and owners and everything else, in which case you'll have to get granular. But as customers have learned the pain of managing tags, they've started to do this. So typically we'll see a customer that with a degree of maturity has a small account with loads of stuff in it that's kind of a mishmash of shared and things with labels on, but they've eventually worked it out, and then they've got account, a resource group, or subscription tags later on. All right, so we need to be able to support all of those things. We talked about, of course, tagging across cloud providers. We want to automatically tag stuff where possible, and I talked about our account provisioning and infrastructure provisioning capability to kind of vend accounts or whatever it might be. And many organizations just won't let engineers provision resources without tags on. But it can be really hard to influence. We have some of our largest customers that all we do is try and address this visibility challenge, right? They have gone into cloud as a speed to market thing, right? Oh, we can grow much bigger if we do this, and it's just at any cost, right? So they've just piled in infrastructure, not labeled it, not tagged it, and it's so hard then to unpick. And you can't get a lot of the value, right? If you can't get those optimization recommendations and take action on them, then you're not saving money. If you can't work out the cost per customer, then you don't understand that spend from a business value, or you can't get to a cost of goods sold measure or whatever else is that you're trying to do. And it effectively devalues the whole proposition of the framework itself. Now, when we ingest the build data, it includes some tag information. So how Flexera gets tags is from the build data. And so in the case of AWS, actually you can create a tag, but it doesn't appear in the build data, right? So you have to specifically go in and say, the tag that I've got here is a cost allocation tag, and then it appears in the curve, okay? That's important, because if the customer says, here's my tagging strategy, and you plug them into the platform and nothing happens, the chances are that they're not included in the build feed. So I'm in the AWS console here. And again, where we went to create that cost and usage report that we're ingesting into the platform, that is under your billing dashboard. And you should find in here that we have a menu option for cost allocation tags. And this will basically list all of the tag data that is within this organizational construct, but you have to choose which ones actually get included in the billing file, okay? It's a simple change to go in and say, yeah, actually account owner is important. I want to allocate costs. Click activate, and that will activate that tag, and it will be included in the billing feed. But if it's not enabled, we're not going to ingest it by default. But quite a simple change to make. In the case of Microsoft, all of the tags are included. Well, all of the resource tags are included, okay? And similarly with Google. Where there are differences are then in the logical groups that we just mentioned, right? So you can tag an account, you can tag a subscription, you can tag a resource group, you can tag a Google project, but they don't get included in the billing files. Even if you go in here and the account, the tag name is the same as tags you've got on resources, they're currently not included by the vendors. So once we've got from the customer the detail around their tagging strategy, what we want to do is go into the platform and enable those tags, okay? So I have worked with customers who have got hundreds of thousands of different tag keys, right? Let alone the value permutations. And so sensibly, Flexera is not just going to pull all of those in and show them, right? It would be just a silly drop-down menu that you'd never get to the bottom of with the majority of customers. Using the automation engine to get a list of the tags that we can see, and you can then come into this custom tag interface and add in the ones that the customer wants to see. But the additional benefit of this is a degree of normalisation, right? So remember the kind of multiple ways that I might spell cost center. None of those are correct in the UK at least. But there are lots of different, tag keys that you might have that actually represent the same thing, particularly across multiple vendors, right? So anything with a capital in isn't going to fly in Google's world. So it's probably the cost center lowercase that is being used here. But for the purposes of showing this data in the platform, I just want them all to be treated the same. Okay, so what Flexera will do will take the keys here, but it will only show this in the UI. So the display name, and you can group together multiple keys. How that manifests itself is in our drop-down list, right? So anywhere you go to pick a dimension to categorize your spend, whether that's in charts that we have here, or it's interesting, our own Wi-Fi is absolutely, it takes ages. Or the charts that we have here, or the tabular view, or whatever it might be, you get a list of dimensions that, and we're going to dig into this in more detail, but you'll see the tags that I have picked here. Okay, and those are the display names, and again, they apply across multiple clouds. Yeah, so there will be an aggregation of whatever keys that you put in. And they can be super useful. You can use those custom tags in the adjustment program via the API, for example. So I could say, actually, anything that's got a business unit of, Flexera gets a 10% discount or whatever it might be, using those tag keys. The other constructs that we have, and we're going to come and talk about these in more detail, will be the billing centers, where I can allocate costs and give things a label that don't exist in the cloud vendor space, right? So there may not be cost center tags on all of my infrastructure, but I can build a billing center structure for my cost centers and allocate costs for it. And we also have a construct called rule-based dimensions. And this can be a set of logic, and we'll look at the details around that, which groups cost. So I could create a dimension. Here we've got chargeback code that could be based on some account information that I got from my financial management system, from SAP or something like that, right? I might have a list of codes. I might have cost center data in my CMDB that I could go and get and build out a dimension. Or it could be some permutation of other metadata. So it could be, things from this cloud vendor in this region with this tag on it are going to go to cost center 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. When we build these rule-based dimensions out, they're also time-bound, very much the same way as adjustments are, okay? So where I've used this to allocate my cloud spend to different, let's do a different time range, to different chargeback codes, you can actually see that changes over time between 21 and 22, with some costs moving between cost centers. When we do cost allocation, it's not fixed. No organization stays the same, right? The service owner or the cost center that applications and services are charged to, they're changing all the time. And so using this construct, we can track the history, because when you want to look back, you don't want it just to be all reflective of the current state. You want to see where the historical allocation was as